Hi, I'm Sharon Pearson. Welcome to Perspectives. If you're joining the show, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. You can follow me on Instagram at sharon.pearson.official. You can send us an email to perspectives@sharonpearson.com. Love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy this week's episode brought to you by The Ultimate You book, available online and in bookstores. And here's the show. Hey everybody, welcome to Perspectives, and it is my pleasure to welcome John Anderson and Perry Mardon to the Perspectives podcast this week. These guys are in business just like I am, and we thought we'd really do a deep dive and unpack what's been going on in these times, these challenging times, these transformational times, how we're approaching it, what is it we're thinking about, what is it we need to attend to, what is it that we've taken away from it, and what is it we'd probably possibly do differently next time, inverted commas, and how we were prepared. But also, I'd love to acknowledge the lack in our businesses to different extents, because, and I think we're going to talk about that as well, because how much credit can I take for the fact that we've done well when we happen to be in a business that's counter-cyclical? So anyway, if we can just hear from you guys a little bit. John, do you want to get started just introducing yourself, what you do, what you care about?
Yeah, sure. So I'm essentially in the adult learning industry. You know, I found my biggest breakthroughs in life didn't necessarily come through my school and my degree at university. It came through the courses and the education I did afterwards. So we sell thousands of training programs in areas like, you know, how to set up an e-commerce business or a real estate portfolio or a share portfolio. And we sell those all around the world via online marketing. So that's what we do.
And you're doing well.
Yeah, we're flourishing at the moment because people are at that stage where it's like, you know what, my one source of income, my job, isn't as reliable as I thought. So I always need to be upskilling myself. I need new options, new alternatives. So it's a boom for sort of adult education and upskilling at the moment. So it's been amazing for us.
Great, thank you. And Perry, over to you.
Yep, thank you, Sharon.
Thanks,
John. Yep, I've been working with business owners for, 25, close to 30 years now, and I run a team, and we work closely with these business owners all over the world, helping them build out their business, meaning we help the owner exit, and that's got to do with the teams that we put in place, the systems that we put in place, getting their psychology right to achieve that, and something that we really love, really enjoy to do. But unlike the two of you, we got whacked when this happened. Our business just went bang, like that. It just stopped overnight. When you're advertising about scaling businesses, that didn't do too well. So I knew that was coming because I was working with my clients in Europe, restructuring them because they were being shut down and they were getting whacked early.
Okay, well, so we definitely need to unpack that as well. Thank you both for joining us. So I have a question that I had in mind, because I know we set ourselves the play of asking a couple of questions and getting the conversation going. How soon did you recognize what was coming? And what were your conversations like then? So
who's answering first, John or me?
Yeah, well, whoever's on the screen, whoever spoke last. So Perry, go for it, and then I'll reverse.
Look, I was observing. I've always watching what's happening in the world. I've got a great interest in geopolitical issues and challenges. So I was watching what was happening in China. So I was kind of aware of what was possible. When it became real for me was when my clients in Italy, UK, were being told to shut their businesses down.
When was this?
Oh, geez. Look, the last probably 4 months has been a bit of a morph in regards to my understanding of time, but that would have been late January, early February, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was when I first was, well, this is going to come here. And my reaction to that at that point was to think strategically. I probably have an approach to business, which is I go to best case scenario, and I always go to worst case scenario. I go, what could happen? And I went and bought recessionbusters.com.au, which I'm really glad I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask how much you paid for that?
$12.
Oh, no.
$12, yeah.
You've already made money on that.
Yeah, I know. And you know what? I just couldn't believe it. I just could not believe that it was even available.
No.
30 years since the
Other
recession,
people
Terry.
Oh, I know. And we'll be talking about that soon because people's response, it was like a lot of denial. It's like, and it's because they've had so long without a recession, without real financial challenges.
And if I can ask a follow-up, how did you go with, because I know all three of us are so rational about this and we can all get criticized for that. How did you go with, because we realized early February and started changing everything early February when the headlines were still it's happening in Asia. How did you go managing that all the dialogue at the time, Perry, was on it's the health we have to worry about, and there was no parallel conversation occurring on the price we were going to have to pay if we reacted the way we had?
Well,
do you understand what I'm saying? Because
I know, I understand exactly what you're saying. So the first thing that I did when I saw that, and I got smashed for this, I just feel that we live in an incredibly unintelligent world at this point in time, unintelligent, where it's all about feelings and emotions. And so I was using the lesser of two evil arguments. I was going, okay, you can go into lockdown and shut us down for the health issues and challenges, but the ramifications of that are obvious. And so you're potentially going to have way more people in the third world and maybe in the second world dying as a result of shutting everything down to save people from dying of COVID. And I wasn't saying I knew the best answer. I was just saying, well, can we have a dialogue about this? I'm seeing if you shut us down, millions upon millions of people are going to die as a result of starvation. The third world doesn't have central banks that are going to be able to bail them out. No one's going to be loaning to them. I was horrified at the lack of debate, the lack of conversation. And when I said those things, I was told I was a heartless human being.
Yeah.
That's what I was told.
Yeah. So you posted it? You went public with that?
Yes, I went public with it. And to be honest, I have actually gone through a period of time. What this period of time did, and I'm going away from business, but this is what it did for me personally. I've had to decide what I wanted to stand up for because I'm kind of quiet.
Yeah.
And I've gone, and I always look at myself. So I look at my own reactions to what's happening in the world. Because I know that my first reactions to what's happening in the world will be based on my own history. So as an example, because of my childhood, I don't trust people. Now let me explain that. Naturally and normally, as I go about my life, I trust people. But when this happened, I noticed I move into mistrust. Okay, I don't trust. So I've already, based on my past history, have a tendency when these things happen not to trust. So rather than just blurt out that I don't trust, I've got to go, well, how much of this is functional? How much of it is dysfunctional? There's a lot of inward looking before I might start communicating something because I want to be clear when I communicate. I want to make sure that I'm being smart and I'm being intelligent, that I'm not just emotionally reacting. So my whole premise is that when the shock comes of anything, we will tend to have past history, past beliefs, past emotions triggered, and they're not going to help us really. That's why I go through a sorting out. And then I came out the other side and I'm horrified at the world at the moment. I'm just horrified by it.
Yeah.
The emotion, no one seems to go to reason anymore.
Yeah. The reason I was asking that, Perry, and we'll go to you, Jay, is I think you're brave posting something. So my attitude, I think you'll relate to this, John, is when it's going against the tide of emotion, it's best just to stay quiet because it doesn't get traction. All it does is create division because thinking through my logic in public doesn't seem to be as warmly received as I'd like it to be. So I'm really selecting, obviously, Jay, I share it with you. You get the whole thing. I'm just so selective with where I share my rational thinking about these times. How about you, Jay? When did you start to realize and what was your...
So I was naive. So we had events in Las Vegas planned for the end of March. We had events in Gold Coast, we had events in London, and I had flights booked and everything. And I was like 3 weeks out. I was like, they're not going to shut the Vegas gaming tables down, so why should we shut our events down? A week later, the gaming was shut down. Oh, okay, this is really serious. So we had to just have the night of the long knives, you know, cancelling all these different events all around the world, and then that was. Now I did have a kind of medical whisperer, because one of my business partners, she did study this at university, so she was looking at the epidemiology reports, going, this is a next level virus, the way it spreads. She talked about the actual data points, so she was saying, I don't think we're running those events, and I'm like, you know, my hopeless naivety, I was still on the board of running them, but you know, we were already running a lot of the business online, so not running live events wasn't such a big deal. They were fulfilling on the product, and we could just switch to fulfilling those products online through online delivery. Our actual marketing system is all pretty much online webinars and stuff, so it didn't really disrupt our client flows. But yeah, I was a late to come to it. I think, you know, Remi, I know you were across it early because you know, you've got good links overseas, and Perry, you do as well. But yeah, I think a little bit naive about it. I didn't realize how fast governments would react. But, you know, on that, I do know that the people that did the studies initially are now saying, well, look, we did the studies of what the virus caused. If we had more time, we could have done studies on what the impacts of our response to the virus would cause. But, you know, you've got a week or whatever just to, hey, here's what will happen. And so they just didn't do that next level of, yeah, but if we do that, what will the response be? So that's interesting. But yeah, I was definitely a late comer compared to you guys in that. Yeah, kicking and screaming.
but by the way, John, I think it's interesting I agree with you that they had to make decisions quickly, but you've also got to remember those decisions they made make them look good, right? Yeah. So and I'm not being horrible, because I have a heart for them. I wouldn't want to be in their position, but I think about it. I'm not being mean, because I understand. It's like,
yeah,
you know, that we've got to save everybody, right? So
yeah.
Right? Even though that might go killing all these other people, we've got to save everybody. It looks good, doesn't it?
I get it. I mean, if you're a politician, right, and you don't have a good choice, right? People are going to die either way. And one thing that I've kind of come back to at the end of this, and, you know, I'll say this, then we can kind of move on from the socio-political commentary on it, is human beings for the last million years, let's say, that we've been around, have always had the right to go and look after their family, to go out and earn a living and protect their family. And I think that is the fundamental right that has been kind of taken away from us in this time. And there's very good reasons for that in terms of protecting the overall welfare of society. But I think it's really important to take stock of that, what that means, to actually take away someone's right to look after their family, you know, to the lockdown laws. And then, so that, I think that has got to be considered, because it's never really been done before. It's never really been done before. So, yeah, that's something that sort of I come to through this, that fundamental right to look after your family. And the people that made the decisions that people couldn't do that were all getting paid throughout that time as well. They all had secure incomes throughout that time, while they're saying that people that may not have had the financial resources to not work couldn't work. So that's the first time in history, really, that's happened, I think. I can't think of another time when that has happened. So
what happens in world wars, when they co-opt businesses and switch them into munitions and making...
But they're still able to work and protect their family. Yeah. They're not forced not to work, right? They're just channeled into a different industry. So that's an interesting thing. And in some countries, you know, the government's been able to, Australia's luckily been able to try and take care of people, but the long-term impacts of unemployment are absolutely devastating.
We haven't come close to seeing how bad this is going to be economically. We're at the beginning of the tsunami. We're at the beginning of it. We think this is okay. It's going to get so much worse. There is literally billions of refinancing loans, sitting with two banks that I know of billions of dollars in refinancing of business owners trying to save what they've built up over a lifetime.
Exactly.
And so those people who've been working all their lives, what they've got are facing a lifetime of repaying a refinance.
Yeah.
They're losing everything. And it's just, we have no idea where this is heading. My story is, we realized with the headlines that were coming in early February, and we cancelled a world trip that my husband had planned. He was heading to Monte Carlo for the historic Grand Prix. We cancelled first week of February, realizing if it's there, it's going everywhere. And if we've got to cancel, everybody else has to cancel. So we started putting plans in then to move from, as you know, guys, we were 100% pretty well face-to-face trainings. We have 1 to 2 events a week somewhere in the world, live in the room. We had moved to 100% online, I think, in 4 days before the lockdown came. And again, it's pure luck that we're in an industry where education is so mobile that we can be on Zoom right now means our business is possible in any times. So we jagged that. The biggest thing for me, what I was thinking about as we went into it is, I was getting the pulse of my students and different people, how long do you think it's going to go? Oh, we'll be all over in a couple of months. So I think it's going to be at least 2 years. We're going to be in this for at least 2 years. And they said, oh, but there'll be a vaccine. There will not be a vaccine. There's never been a COVID vaccine in the history of mankind. There's very unlikely to be a vaccine. If you're planning on the luck of a vaccine, you're not planning for the right stuff. But I kept hearing this message, guys, of it'll be done, at the worst it'll be 6 months. I said, how about you plan for 2 years and make your plans more permanent? Why don't you design your businesses that if it stays this way, you're going to be okay? Because there were so many people saying to me, I just want it to go back to how it was. I just want this to be over. I just want things to go back to the way. It's never going back. You're wishing for a time that's gone. Because in the long shot that there is a vaccine, in the long shot, there's no longitudinal study, so we don't know its impact on the body. So let's say they have one. I don't know about you, but I don't know if I'm injecting something where I don't know its impact in 5 years' time or whatever. But the likelihood is so slim, and the economic tsunami is really going to hit next year and the year after, because businesses have been holding on for grim, oh my God, just holding on. In September, apparently that tap turns off. So it's more unemployment. There's more businesses folding, never opening again. There's more banks picking up bankruptcies. It's more of a bankrupt culture that we're going to be creating. Strips are just empty of any retail. So the reason to go out and enjoy ourselves and to be into, all of that's never going back. We're years away from a strip retail ever being back, if we were ever going to get back to it.
Yeah.
So taking all that into account, my husband and I, JP and I, sat down and said, well, how would we engineer our businesses given this is the new normal? And that's really where we came from. And again, huge respect to the fact that, and acknowledgement that we're lucky that we're in an industry that handles this cycle. So that was our approach. And the pragmatism is something I haven't really spoken about that much publicly before, because I'm just so mindful that there's so much vitriol directed towards people who seem to be very pragmatic and very business focused about it, and just very down to earth about what's going to happen, rather than constantly talking about the health cost. In terms of the health cost, my concern is with 103 deaths as of today, most years 1,000 people die of the flu, more people die in the roads driving cars. We're reacting so incredibly strongly to something where the price we're paying health-wise is currently so small, but the health price that we're heading for in the next year is going to be massive, as people can never reclaim their lives, who literally will never, as you say, John, be able to provide for their families again, who are facing long-term, chronic, permanent unemployment because we're in recession. The health cost we're heading for, that's where I'm placing my concern.
The insanity that this was not addressed up front is amazing, because I, like you, Sharon, it was obvious to me where this would lead. Obvious. And again, from a pragmatic perspective, that allowed me also to make decisions, which is why I was able to quickly pivot and do what that's the word now, pivot. But yeah, And you know what? The other aspect of this is the level of denial I saw in people and still see in them.
Yeah.
I mean, I had conversations this morning, and people keep thinking, "Oh, the market's righting themselves," and and these are people that they're not dummies, and I'm like, and this happened right from the start because I was working with my clients in Europe, and I'm coming back telling my clients here, "Hey, get prepared. This is what's coming. This is what's happening," and my clients trust me. They've worked with me for a long time, but I could see still they could not comprehend. And I still think, Sharon, yeah, I got old now. I still think, Remi, there's an edit. I still think, Remi, that most people aren't aware of where we are going.
No.
And that scares me.
Well, in Australia, we haven't been through it in so long, 30 years. It's very unfamiliar for, a lot of people, and it's, a global pandemic is hard to imagine because we haven't had that really before either. And so I think that agility and being able to look the facts in the face is so important. So in terms of the way for entrepreneurs to respond now, or business owners to respond, one of the big themes I'm hearing is just about, how can you look the current marketplace, look the future market place in the eyes, not what you wish it would be, not what you'd like it to be. How can you find a growth industry within that market? I've been fortunate enough just to be in a growth market, not because I actively sought it before, because I didn't know this was happening. It just happens to be one of the growth markets. But how do you pivot to find that growth market? Because the biggest thing I've learned in business, I've been in business maybe 20 years, is actually when you want to be flowing with the stream. I've tried to make businesses work where the market wasn't wanting what I'm wanting to sell, and you can spend years doing it and barely. And when you find something that is going downstream, that's going with the flow of the market, then it just feels easy to grow. So I suppose the question is where are those sectors of the economy? Where can people be positioning themselves now to actually to grow? And it may not be changing. I mean, let's put it this way: so that there's restaurants in my areas, the ones that actually set themselves up to do take-home delivery of their gourmet meals rather than just shutting shop, they actually did a good trade. They managed to keep on staff, whereas the ones that just, too much, we're just going to furlough it, who knows if they'll be able to come back. So it's about, you might need to pivot within your industry, or you might need to go into an entirely different industry. I know, Remi, you did that. You were very active at the start of this to also pivot into new industries as well. But what are your thoughts on that?
So what we did, JP and I, was we said, this is permanent. This is the new reality. The government is going to dictate who can make money and who cannot. They literally have done that. They've mandated it with what they've legislated, that literally businesses currently, or some businesses are illegal right now. Some are legal, some can thrive, some literally by government mandate cannot. So based on that set of reality, and that's a whole story about what I think about that, where can we be placed to, as you say perfectly, go with the stream? So we had just by pure ask, guys, started an import business and a sourcing business for people around the world of anything they wanted, literally the month before. Can you believe it? And we had this whole vision of these conservative numbers, and we'll do maybe a couple of thousand in this profit and a couple in that. The moment it hit, it became really obvious. Hand sanitizer, toilet paper, masks, gloves. I mean, it just became obvious. So we became major distributors of that. And as a result of that, we looked at, well, what industries are going to do really well? And there was a couple, I won't go into all of that, but there was a couple of industries that clearly within that would do well. So we picked up masses of business helping with those businesses because their business is doing well. So what we thought we were going to have, we let go of very rapidly. We've never had the conversation, we've got to keep and protect what we've got. The conversation's always got to be, we're ready to, this is what we did. We sat down and said, if we never had anything, how would we want it to be, given this is now the new version of reality? So the Coaching Institute, completely re-engineered and still re-engineering the Coach Institute completely in really fantastic ways that mean JP and I have the lifestyle that we want in terms of freedom. We get to serve our clients at another level. And this other business, again, it's been designed with our futures in mind, because we truly believe this is a new reality. The other thing that we did was we placed across it all humanity ahead of profits. So we made the decision, really, there were two major guiding values or themes throughout the whole thing. Thing number one is humanity ahead of profits. So whatever we do, we can't price gouge. So it would be really easy to price gouge. There was hand sanitizer at $50 for 500 mils. We were at $6. So literally just any opportunity we could serve during this time for people who weren't capable of thinking it through or needed a lot more support, that's where we went. And just make sure we took care of people. That became really important, because the second thing, which is our guiding principle, is at the end of the crisis, you better look back and be proud of how you handled yourself. So we have to look back proud of who we've been during it and proud of the decisions we've made, and we must stay living our values during it. So with those two guiding principles, we've made our decisions. So, three principles: be proud of who you were during it, humanity ahead of profits, and the third one, re-engineer based on this being permanent. And that's become our guiding principles through every conversation. And now we have weekly conversations about those three principles and how we're applying them, because pivots, as you guys know, is happening weekly right now. So every single week we meet for about 2 hours, look back, are we pivoting the right way? Are we innovating the way we need to? Are we solving the problems that are now it's not a glitch in the system, it's the fucking system. And there's a big difference between glitches and systems, and we just re-engineer every single week moving forward based on that. So that's how we're approaching it. How about you, Perry?
I've got part of my responsibility for my clients is to help them pivot. And so I've got my whole viewpoint around business people at this point in time is, and it comes back to what you were saying before, John, we've had sort of 72 years or something like that of relative peace, and even our economic crises aren't anything compared to what we're about to see. So my take now is that business people have to be aware of trends. This means that you have to be more aware of the world than you've ever been. So this means you have what I call, you've got to be awake, right? So it's the end of, oh, well, it's business as usual. And things that are happening between China and Australia could whack your business. So if you're not aware of those things, you're in trouble. I've got clients in the ag sector who thought everything was hunky-dory, and I'm telling them, be careful, because you see, so and there's another aspect, because you just said that, Remi, it's like you've got to be aware every week, because this is what I call a cumulative crisis. So the crisis itself of COVID knocks over other weak, what I call weak systems. And then those weak systems, what we're seeing in America at this point in time, you can guarantee, this is the racist riots that are happening. There's a whole bunch of pent up anger, and because, you know, people have been under pressure through this whole thing, that's coming out, that's going to impact things. So being very aware of what's happening in the world. Now, it's also important to say that, and I have to tell my clients this, there's more money to be made in these emerging markets than you probably made before. If you're first in and you see them and you understand them, there's really good money to be made. Really, really good money to be made. It's just being awake and to those trends. So you've got to be a bit more outward focused about what's happening in the world. But what's also very interesting to me is I notice that people struggle to do that, because I've observed from a psychological perspective, many clients, like you said before, Remi, wanted to go back to what it was, or they're still operating as though the world hasn't changed. It's changed completely. Yeah. And those business owners, they're gonna suffer. They're going to suffer. They're just going to suffer.
It's that whole inertia thing, you know, if you've been doing something for so long, to break out and do something new, it feels risky, it feels scary, but it actually could be the riskiest thing in the world to stay where you are. I know for
Yeah.
myself, I'm always like asking my friends in America, oh, can we run events soon? Can we run events soon? Because I'm wanting to go back to what's familiar. So there's that thing, and it'll start to normalize and stuff like that. And
Well,
so
yeah, John, you're entrepreneurial. I would have imagined you would have gone straight to the trends. Like one of the things that I've sort of been observing in people is you've got pure entrepreneurs. My pure entrepreneur clients, they were as quick as I was in going, well, what's next?
Yeah.
Right.
That's the question.
What?
Next?
Yeah.
What's next?
Yeah. What's next? Where my less pure entrepreneurs, they're still been good business people in the past, right?
Yes.
In the past, they're not pure entrepreneurs. They were very good at the service that they did, or they loved the product and they built that business around that. They're the ones that are more like, well, I don't want things to change because
they don't have a skill set yet, right? To go into a completely different industry that they've been in agricultural for 30 years. Oh, now I'm going to set up an e-commerce business selling, widgets. Like that's something I've never done before. So there's an upskilling as well, right? It's not just a matter of pivot. It's knowing where to pivot. So what data points are you using to get new trends, and then upskilling. Otherwise, you're going to get eaten alive by other people who are pivoting as well, but they're better at it. They've got skills in that area.
No, that's right. But by the way, a friend of mine said something really interesting that applies to that. He said to me, Perry, you got to remember, he said, you've lived your entire life in uncertainty. So uncertainty, you're used to operating in uncertainty. And what I mean by that, I've been entrepreneurial all my life. And you've taken risks where people that have been in certainty, this is really throwing them, right? This is really throwing them. I thought that was really interesting. He said, look at your business owners that might struggle. How long have they been doing that business for? 20 years, 30 years, right? Where I've been in the same business, but I'll change it up all the time and I'll go and do other things and I'm involved with other businesses. So it does come down to, and I thought that was a really good map for me to start to understand, because I was a bit frustrated that some of my clients, because I love my clients, I want them to change, but I could just see they were still, you need to, right? And it's because they're so used to being in certainty. I actually did have an emotional reaction. My emotional reaction came probably 2.5 months after this happened. So immediately I was just working closely with my clients, caring for them, helping them through and restructure and what have you. Then I was doing my own. Then I had a moment of falling flat on my face emotionally through this whole process. It was about a week to 2 weeks.
What was that? What was the actual thought and emotion that had you?
I think I haven't processed it fully yet. I'm quite excited in dramatic scenarios. So I was having to work with my clients. So I was probably in that really excited mode. I don't mind the challenge.
Game time.
Game time for me. It's game time for me. I probably went through that process. And then in COVID, I had some beautiful times with my wife. So it's not like I had a horrible time. I think there was a full realization of how the world was going to change. Is probably the full realization of it. And there was a sense of loss, a sense of a semi-depression. I'm not a depressed character, but I was just flat.
Well,
maybe
what you're seeing is the complete hemorrhaging, like a kick to the guts, of almost decapitation of the economy, particularly in America, but to a lesser extent over here. And yet you don't have any control over it. Like you've got control in your little spectre, but it's like you're seeing what's happening. You're seeing just millions of businesses, millions of jobs go under, but as individuals, you don't really have control. And, stress and depression is stuff that you feel strongly about that you can't control. That's why you kind of got to manage your news intake and stuff, because it's like, oh my God, this is absolutely terrible. These families being affected. And what do? Where's your impetus to have control over it? You've only got control over your own sphere, to be an economic stimulator in your own sphere.
That's a good point, John, because I've known you for years, and you've got empathy. So if you've got empathy, I think you can't help but be impacted by watching the world and like and being impacted. If you're watching the news all the time, you're being triggered about it's our world. It's the world we live in.
It's also a feeling of sadness, I would say. I felt, if I let myself go there, I feel sad about what people aren't going to know. Just sort of micro example, I'm watching Queensland tourist industry be dismantled day by day by their decision to have the borders shut. And just a little story of a husband and wife in their 60s. They sold all their real estate in Melbourne to go there and go into this multi-million-dollar resort. Everything they ever built for their entire life is in that place. I get emotional thinking about it. I don't even know these people. And it's shut, and they're losing everything. They're losing their entire legacy, what gave their lives meaning. They're just two working hard people who put everything into it, and it's just obliterated by a decision like this. And I get that I'm going to have viewers going, oh, it's important to be safe. Did you know that 9 out of 10 Australians think keeping the borders up within Australia is a good idea? 9 out of 10 believe it's a good decision. And I'm watching this couple thinking that they literally represent tens of thousands of business owners who do not have time ahead of them to rebuild again and to bring that entrepreneurship. They are facing bankruptcy. And you look at how bankruptcy is treated in Australia, that is not a pretty thing. And that's the legacy of their lives because of this decision. And I feel such sadness, Perry. You were saying what you were feeling. If I let myself go there, I feel such grief for what people are going to lose during this time. And they have nothing they can do about it. And they're not like us. They can't start again. They don't have more road ahead of them to do that. It's devastating.
Remi, out of interest, since you brought the subject up, how do you feel about our governments having such a rule over us now, and the fact that they can just make these decisions and bang, it just impacts, and we're almost powerless to do anything about that.
Almost powerless. We are powerless. How do I think about it? My first thoughts go to my concern about how easily people have fallen into line and how so few people are questioning it and won't use their intellect to think through, is this the way we should be going? I feel tremendous sadness that conversation can't be had easily without being judged, because then you get screamed at, what about the people's lives? And it's about people's health. How could you talk about the economy? Well, because I know where we're heading. As much as I can know where we're heading, guys, I think I only have a microcosm of what I think I know about where we're heading. It's way worse than I can imagine. My imagination cannot cope with what these decisions are going to cost us in the next few years. So that's my first thing. And the second thing I think is, how has my silence made me complicit in this? And I have a real wrestle constantly, and I've spoken to JA about this. I wrestle with my conscience around how I have stayed quiet about it, because I make a point of not being political publicly, because I just can't, frankly, face the fucking flack. I'm over it. But I'm complicit in it with my silence. And that really concerns me. I don't know that I've been who I want to be during these times, Perry. And I feel sadness about what I've given up. I feel real loss about what I've given up, because I keep meeting people whose income is guaranteed saying it's a good thing everything's shut. The wealth eaters, the people who spend the wealth, all think it's good. The wealth creators all think we've gone too far. And no one will talk about the fact, well, if the people who create the wealth pay the tax and everyone who's living off the tax thinks it's great, do you realize one day we run out of the ability to pay the fucking tax? Then what will you be saying? Then will you be saying, oh, we should have opened sooner? But by then it'll be too late, because the whole thing would have fed in itself in a spiral down of ability to pay for the luxury of protecting every single job. And so I think this is nuanced. I think it's complicated. I don't think I've done a good job expressing myself with that. But as best as I can, that's the mess in my mind most days. That's
that's so, I love that. That's right. Well, that's what I've been working through, the same thing, because I feel like if people don't stand up right now and communicate, we're complicit. And again, but if you stand up and communicate, and we're living in a world, right? This is fascinating to me, where I watch the media. The media and the level of journalism in the world now is just disgusting.
It's
And I started.
It's not news reporting. It's editorializing.
It's editorializing.
Agenda. It's an editorial we watch.
Correct. Now that is scary, because in my mind, right, as a human being, right, I'm uninterested in the truth. So when I was growing up as a little kid and I had to change my behavior because I was a brat and in trouble and then forced for violent offending, I had to own the truth about me. I had to go, this is how I behave. Right? Truth's really important to me. When I work with my clients, I need to know, well, if your marketing's not working, let's look at the data, right? Why is that landing page not converting? Right? We'll adjust that landing page and let's see how it converts after that. And it's all numbers, right? Truth matters, but we live in a world that's more interested in agenda-driven journalism. Now, if there's agenda-driven in journalism, other than the agenda of truth, it's not journalism. And it frightens me. So coming back to what you say, you can see I'm the same. I'm like, Perry, what do I do? How do I deal with this?
Yeah.
How do I communicate? Now, I know when I first blurted out, I would have lost some of my clients in America, right? Because I've also hidden. I hide who I am for the most part in business, because I deal with Christians and I deal with Muslims and I deal with people with all sorts of left-wing persuasive thinking, right-wing persuasive thinking. So I just keep my viewpoint.
Yeah, it's better for you. Like economically, it's just better to be down the line neutral, I think. Neutral,
but I like what Sharon was saying. Hardwired it. Like what Remi was saying.
And there's no upside to going on Facebook.
There's no upside to facing the virtue signaling on social media. There is no upside to it. I won't be on Twitter because I see no point in opening myself up to a mob attack of people who can take the easiest, worst slant. I love listening to Sam Harris, as you both know. And one of his key messages that I just adore and try my best to live by is assume the best intentions, don't look for the worst, because we're going to virtue signal and keep yelling at each other if we keep looking for the worst. And so I feel really tentative with how public I'll be about my views, because I won't have the best intentions assumed for me often, and people won't be that curious to seek to understand. They're more interested in stopping the dialogue than engaging in the dialogue. That's why I love chatting with you, because we can do it. There's no limit to where we can take those ideas and mock each other if we don't agree. But I have found this time has pushed me more away from the left, which is something I noticed was happening to the major commentators and thinkers in public I was listening to in America. And I thought, that's not going to happen to me, but it's pushed me further from the left. So I still have left ideals around everyone needs to be taken care of, and we do the best for the weakest, which measures our society, and the environment is absolutely there to be protected and is literally not inherited by us, but a caretaking role for us, all of that. But the rest of my ideas, I can't get on board that an idea, a bad idea, can't have light. My bad ideas have every right to have light and to be explored so I can learn and grow. Because if we keep creating a society where bad ideas can't at least be explored, how do we learn? How do we adjust? We just seem to be so locked and rigid in these thoughts. Anyway, I'm ranting. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And, you know, I remember there's a political commentator, Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks, he runs it online, and he got disendorsed, I think, by Bernie Sanders' campaign because of some homophobic things he said in college, right? And now he's like the most progressive guy. He's so right on. He's so good about, you know, in sort of his frame of reference, he's so right on about everything. But they're getting you for something he said in college. That's just bananas. Like, and that's the reason why I would 100% fuck everything up if I just went online and said exactly what I thought as I thought it. Like, it would ruin my life in days. And then if people could go back to it 10 years later of just something I said. So I'm like, zero upside, but then I've got to deal with the fact that I'm not really out there making a difference, but also in what would me doing that even make a difference? I'm just another voice. Like Twitter's just different, similar people from a similar chattering class agreeing or disagreeing with each other. Like, does it really actually make a difference to the hospitality worker in America who was earning $12 an hour and hasn't been out of work for the last 2 months, right? So that's the thing, is like, where do you even affect change anyway? How do you actually pull the levers? And in a way, and we have been disenfranchised, and I've certainly found myself, I'm generally progressive on pretty much every issue, but then I look at the governors and the state governors, heads of state in Australia, the worst ones from my perspective. I'm like I would love to be up at Noosa, spending money. I would love to, making the economy flourish, and I can't, right? So I'd go to Byron Bay, so it's just like, give these people the chance to earn money. So it's definitely given me, sort of moved me away from the state so much and moved me towards business owners being able to operate, create wealth, and create jobs. Because when you've had mass the deindustrialization of America led to the opioid epidemic. 6 million or so probably died in that. The deindustrialization in Scotland led to massive drug abuse, and because you lose the sort of community and the dignity that's fostered by having a job to be able to support your family. And 40 million or so unemployed in America, if you think that's not going to cause a new wave of epidemics and stuff, you're absolutely dreaming. So.
Absolutely insane. By the way, both of you, Remi called it a rant. I love both your rants. Right? Rants are important. And my take with both those things too is we've lost the art of being able to discuss all different sides of an argument. Okay, yeah. That's the issue and challenge here, where personally I watch left-wing stuff, I watch I've been the ultimate explorer of human consciousness, so I want to know what everyone's up to, what they think, why they think, and the beauty in that is the breadth of friends that I have from all walks of life who just think completely different to me. I've got real capitalist right-wing mates that are just, people go, why do you hang around with them? I actually like them, and we have discussions. They don't shut me down. We only grow when we're willing to entertain someone else's point of view, where we can look at that and go, oh yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay. So we now live in the world where those conversations aren't allowed to happen. You're just shamed for having a different point of view. And coming back to what you said before, Remi, about you've gone away from the left, maybe not. See, maybe you're just what we call the thinking left, right? And so, because I've entertained this as well, I've gone, wow, am I middle now? Am I middle right? What position do I sit in? And one of my friends pointed out, well, maybe no, you're just the way you've always been. It's just that the real left's gone to what I would consider a radical level that I can no longer fully relate to or comprehend from an intellectual perspective, but I still have left leanings. I still have I really care for the environment. I still have idealistic leanings, but I don't
find a home in the centralist view. I have to pull the best of the left and the best of the right and come up for a name for it, because that's where I'm finding I'm sitting more these days. One of the things that I feel concerned about moving forward is, as we're staying home more, as we're more time on social media, more radicalization, more extreme views, more siloed views, means we're literally raising the next generation. All they will know is silos. This is all the next generation coming through will know. They'll only have had computers, social media, encouraged to distance themselves. We are literally encouraging and endorsing behaviors that create mental ill health. And we wonder why so many young people have mental health issues. We're literally endorsing patterns of behavior that can only cause someone to feel isolated, excluded, FOMO, self-involvement, over self-consciousness about how they view their points. The moment a young person has to give a view with an audience, they're already condemned to a level of self-consciousness no young person should ever have to endure. Adults can barely endure it. So that's one of my big concerns, is this next 10 years, telling kids not to go to the playground, telling them to stay home, telling them to not be with their friends, and telling them to get their source of education, entertainment, and all information from a box that is already radicalized. We are literally creating the next level of silos around the planet.
Yeah. Where's the values and ethics? Like, where's virtues, values, and ethics in any of these decisions, discussions around how we move forward as human beings? Because you now, Remi, are leading me into my biggest concern, which is, yes, we are now online. We're now having. I mean, you imagine what's going to happen with the supercomputers and what they're able to do with algorithms in future. And we're living in online environments where we're having feedback loops around what we think. It is dangerous.
Yeah.
I'm trying so hard to get outside my bubble. I know you do as well, Jay. I just keep pushing, trying to seek every single viewpoint I can on something to at least understand, and then sometimes literally just dismiss it as that's never going to work and it's not scalable, but just to try to understand. But I'm meeting a lot of people who are not putting in this effort. They're in their silo and they barely know it's a silo.